Hi, and welcome to TeraByte's guide to answering questions to Cyber Essentials. Cyber Essentials, if you didn't already know, is a government-backed scheme by NCSC, which is the National Cybersecurity Centre, and they primarily released it about 5 or 6 years ago as time of recording, just to try and get to the basic level of cybersecurity awareness and security for all small and medium businesses to protect themselves and reduce cyber-related threats. Now, just a bit of a heads up, this video is based upon the IASME Cyber Essentials basic question set. Now, Cyber Essentials is a core question set against all the accreditation bodies, which there's 5 of. TeraByte is with IASME, and with that, we're just going to go through their questions. So if you go with another provider like Crest or anyone else, it should be fairly similar. Okay, and in total, there's about 66 questions. There might be a few less for other certification bodies, but it depends who you go with. So there we go. So let's kick on. So section 1 is pretty much all about your company. So question A11, what is your organization and name? For this, you just put in what your registered company is, which is registered against Companies House. Nothing too complicated about that. With all these questions as well, when you go and enter them all in, put as much information as possible in. Where there's a question that asks for a description or some kind of definition of what you're doing, make sure you put like a sentence or 2 in there, just so when you get it all signed off by the certification body, you know, they don't have to go back to you and ask again. Okay, so question 1.2, what is your organizational's registration number? This is just the registration number that's listed against Companies House. 99% of the companies will have one, so if you have one, type it in there. And the next one, A13, what is your organizational address? Again, this is just the registration address for your company. And A14, what is your main business? Now with this, you only have a couple of options to select from, so select the one that's the best fit. A lot of companies won't have a perfect fit, but pick the one that's the closest to your business. And A15, what is your website address? If you have a website, put your website address down there. And A16, what is the size of your organization? Now there, you just have to, you know, if it's a massive big company, you know, put close to the 10s, whatever, so 200 people, 100 people, or if it's a small business, you know, 5 or 6 people. And how many staff are home workers? This question is how many staff are full-time home workers, not just work from home every now and then. It's do they work at home for 100% of their working career in that company? And then put down the amount of home workers there. If you have no one who works there full-time at home, just put 0. And now this is about the scope of the assessment. So A21, does the scope of this assessment cover your whole organization? 99.9% of the time this is going to be yes. The only time you'd actually put no to this is if you're a large corporate who, for argument's sake, has multiple sites across multiple countries, and you only want to do the UK-based company within the group of companies that might be international. So you would just say UK wide only. But as most companies are going to be full scope for the full organization, just put yes for that. Now A22, as I was just saying there, if it's not for the whole organization, this is what you put in there. So you'd say only for the UK part of the group of companies or something like that. So I'm not too sure why there's 3 and 4 are missing for part 2, but we'll go on to A25. Please describe the geographical locations of your business which are in scope of this assessment. Again, this is just saying, are you based in the UK, and what are you in England, whereabouts? So for example, for TeraByte, you could say based in the northeast of England. A26, please list the quantities of laptops, computers and servers within the scope of this assessment. Now the important part of this is, yes, you do have to list all the quantities of the computers and servers that you have, which have a user interface and are connected to the internet. So if you have any devices on your network which aren't connected to the internet or can't see the internet, they're not in scope of this Cyber Essentials. It's only for computers and devices that have access to the internet and you have a graphical user interface on it. As well as this, you also have to list the operating system version. For example, Windows 10. Windows 10 now has multiple different versions. So you'd have to go in, find the version and say, we have 10 Windows 10 operating system computers running Dell laptops version 1903 for Windows or something like that. Put as much information as possible in there. If you ever have any questions or anything like that, just contact your certification body and they'll help you out with that. Now A27, again this is with tablets and mobile devices, similar sort of thing. List how many tablets and mobile devices that are used for business and put in the operating system version and number. Again, this is all down to making sure that the devices that you use and the software that you use is in scope and supported for Cyber Essentials. Anything that is not supported by mainstream providers, for example, Windows XP by Microsoft, that would actually class as a fail for Cyber Essentials. So make sure that all your operating systems and software is all fully up to date and still supported by your provider. Now, A28, please provide a list of networks that will be in scope for this assessment. Depending upon the size of your business, it might just be a case of head office network and wireless network that you just write in there. If you're a home user, you would say home office network. Nothing too much in there to say. Now A29, please provide a list of network equipment that will be in scope for this assessment. So for this, it could say you have a Cisco firewall with Dell switches or Cisco switches. And if you have wireless networks, you could be saying that you have Meraki access points. If you're just a home user, you could say you've got a, for example, Sky Hub and go from there. So A210, please provide the name and the role of the person who's responsible for managing the information systems in the scope of this assessment. This is primarily the main person who'll probably be filling in this self-assessment. It's the main person who deals with the information systems within the business. If you're a one-man band, you put yourself down. If you're in a larger company, you put down who looks after the IT. Normally it might be the head of IT or director of information technology, something like that. And section 3. This is all about insurance. I believe this section's only really for IASME related certification bodies. If you go with CREST or someone else, these questions don't exist, I believe. But A31, is your head office domiciled in the UK and what is your gross annual turnover less than 20 million? This is mainly for the free Cyber Essentials cyber liability insurance that you get through IASME. If your turnover is less than 20 million and you're based in the UK, you're able to get free cyber liability insurance. And then A32, if you said yes, it is less than that, you can then actually say yes or no to whether or not you want the insurance. A33, what is your total gross revenue? This is mainly down for insurance purposes again, so put down the figure that's closest to the nearest 100,000. So if you've got a small business that turnover 60, 70,000 pounds, you could either put that down or put 100,000 down. So A34 is your company or subsidiaries, any of the following. Again, just put down whether or not you're any of that list: medical, call center, telemarketing, data processing, ISP, stuff like that. If you're not, just stick no, not applicable in there. A35, does your company have any domiciled operation or derivative revenue from the territorial jurisdiction of Canada and or the USA? Again, this is down to insurance purposes. Stick yes or no. If you stick yes down, just put a little bit about it. And then A36, what is your organization email contact for the insurance documents? As it says in that question, yeah, just put down the primary contact for who wants to receive the insurance documents. So section 4, office firewalls and internet gateways. So these are the hardware devices that connect your office to the internet. So do you have firewalls at the boundaries between your organizational internal networks and the internet? So if you're a home user, you'd have a BT Hub or Virgin Media Box, and that would be your boundary firewall there. If you're in a main office, you've probably got your own firewalls, maybe like Cisco, Meraki, or Juniper, things like that. If you're in a managed service office, you should have your own firewall within your office, which then goes to the managed service one. So for example, if you're in a Regis building, You shouldn't just rely upon the Regis firewall where you just plug it into the network and there you go. You should actually have your systems connected into a firewall for your office, and then your office then goes off to the managed service provider. Okay, and then next, A42, when you first receive an internet router or hardware firewall, it'll have a default password on it. Have you changed this password? So what this is saying is, as soon as you get your new equipment, make sure you change the password, make it to a nice complex one, greater than 8 characters in length. And again, that's what A43 says, is the new password on all your routers or hardware firewalls at least 8 characters in length and difficult to guess. Ideally, use a password manager, have it greater than 10 characters, and every single device have a unique password. So A44, do you change your password when you believe it might have been compromised? Again, this at this point in time, it's just for the board of firewalls and gateways. So what it's saying is, if you believe you've had a data breach or something's been compromised, maybe someone from the office has left and has been malicious, have you changed the password as soon as you've realized? If you stick yes, put a description down how you do it. So it just details here, if we believe we've been compromised, we will do X, Y, and Z to ensure that it's all been changed. So A45, do you have any services enabled that are accessible externally from your internet router or hardware firewalls for which you do not have documented business case? So what this question is saying is, are you hosting any services that go out to the internet, people can get access to it directly from your office? If you say no, that's fine. If you say yes, then you've got to put a little description in saying what it is and why. And then A46, if you do have services enabled on your firewall, do you have a process to ensure that they are disabled in a timely manner when they're no longer required? So again, this is just saying, if you do actually have services that are out to the internet, people can get access to it. If a point comes in time where you no longer need it, make sure that you turn it off. And then actually just list a process of actually showing how you do that. And then A47. If you have configured your internet routers and hardware firewall devices so that they block all services from being advertised to the internet, what that is saying is making sure that you block everything from coming from the office onto the internet. That just makes sure that everything's nice and secure. Now these days, pretty much every single firewall or hardware device will do that. They'll block everything by default before going out, and then you have to implicitly allow stuff to go out. So A48, are your internet routers or hardware firewalls configured to allow access to the configuration settings over the internet? Again, this is just saying, if you've got a cloud-based firewall, for example Meraki, can you get access to that firewall anywhere on the internet? If you can, you've got to say yes to that. And then in the next question, write down the reason for that. So it could be a case of, yes, third-party managed service provider is managing our firewalls. If you do actually have the firewalls exposed to the internet, try and make sure that they're actually whitelisted or they're blocked to being accessed over the VPN or something like that. A410, if yes, is the access to the settings protected by the two-factor authentication or by allowing trusted IP addresses to access the settings? Again, just what I said there. If you've got the configuration of the firewall open to the internet, just make sure you lock it down. Make sure it's only configured to trusted IPs, or you need an extra layer of authentication to get access to it. A411, do you have software firewalls enabled on all of your computers and laptops? Now, this is a mandatory requirement for Cyber Essentials. You've got to make sure that every single computer and laptop has software firewall enabled. If it's Windows, it's Windows Defender. If it's Mac, you've got to have a firewall on the Mac. I'm not too sure if it has one by default or not, because I'm a Windows person. And same with Linux as well. You've got to have firewalls on there as well. So A412, which is saying, if you don't actually have a software firewall enabled, is it because it's not commonly available for that operating system that you're using? If you say no, put a description down saying why you've not actually got software firewalls on there, and just give it a justification for it. So section 5, secure configuration. Where you're able to do so, have you removed or disabled all the software that you do not use on your laptops, computers, tablets and mobile phones, and describe how you achieve this. This is making sure that you don't have obsolete software on your computer, and you only have the main software that you have, just to reduce the chances of getting compromised or running obsolete old software. So for example, when you get Windows and it's got lots and lots of third-party applications on, have you removed all that? And just put a description in how you do all that. So it could be a case of you have a gold image that gets deployed to the company and everyone uses that one that's been updated and customized. A52, have you ensured that all your laptops, computers, servers, tablets and mobile devices only contain the necessary user accounts that are regularly used in the course of this business? Now what this is meaning is, do you only have the user accounts that you actually need to actually work on your computer? So make sure guest account's disabled, you only have your own dedicated user account, and you might have an administrator account that you don't use for day to day. Excuse me. And then A53, have you changed the default password for all users and administrator accounts on all your laptops, computers, servers, tablets and smartphones to a non-guessable password of 8 characters or more? So again, this is just making sure that every single user account has a secure password that is complex, no one knows it, and it's really difficult to guess. Although 8 characters or more is the minimum, I would recommend using a much harder one and get a password that isn't a dictionary password. So making sure that you don't do password 1 or anything that could be quite easily guessable. Again, A54, do all your users and administrators use passwords of at least 8 characters? Again, as I was saying, try and use it more than 8 characters. The longer the better. It keeps your system nice and secure. A55, do you run software that provides sensitive or critical information that shouldn't be made public to external users across the internet? This is just making sure that you're not actually running software that provides personal information that's exposed to the internet. For example, if you've got an internal wiki or internal intranet system, make sure it's not exposed to the internet. Keep everything that should be confidential and internal. If you do though, however, the next question is A56, you've got to actually just describe, making sure that the services are password protected, that it is all locked down. A57, if yes, again, to having services exposed to the internet, do ensure that you change passwords if they believe that they've been compromised. Again, this is just making sure that you have a process in place where if you think there's been a data breach or a corruption or a compromise of some service, that you change passwords as soon as possible. And again, here you just put down the description of what you do. So if you're saying, yes, if we believe we are being compromised, we'll do X, Y, and Z. A58, if yes, are your systems set to lock out at 10 or fewer unsuccessful login attempts or limit the number of login attempts to no more than 10 within 5 minutes? Again, this question is about brute forcing, so making sure that if someone's trying to break into your account, that your account gets locked out within 10 or fewer login attempts. If you don't actually have this in place, speak to your system administrator and make sure that that gets put in place. That just makes sure that if someone does get your password or thinks they know your password, you can just make sure that the system is protected and it's all locked down. And A59, if yes, do you have a password policy that guides all users? This is just making sure that you have a corporate-wide password policy that everyone knows about. So for example, the minimum password length is 8. You've got to use complex passwords, whether or not it expires anytime or not. You don't have to have passwords that expire. They could be for a year or longer, as long as they're big, secure and unique. A510 is auto-run or autoplay disabled on your systems. This question is talking about whether or not you plug a USB device in or a CD-ROM, if you've still got capability to do that. Will it automatically run? In newer versions of Windows, you'll get prompted. So if you stick a USB device in, and as long as it comes up with a prompt saying, do you want to run this or do you want to open this, that's fine. If you plug something into your computer and it automatically runs an application, runs a program, something like that, that's a fail, and you have to make sure that that's fixed. A61, are all your operating systems and firmware on your devices supported by a supplier that produces regular fixes and any security problems? This is making sure that your operating system and your drivers, your systems, all your devices are all kept up to date. You just got to make sure that everything that is supported is actually fixed and updated as soon as possible. Best ways of doing this is signing up to the manufacturer's mailing lists, so you get told as soon as there's an update. A62, are all applications on your devices supported by a supplier that produces regular fixes for any security problems? Again, this is just making sure that your devices are kept up to date. So for instance, Windows is kept up to date. If you've got any firmware updates for laptops, routers, switches, anything like that, they've all got to be kept up to date and supported. A63, is all software licensed in accordance with the publisher's recommendations? Again, this is just making sure that software is kept up to date, is supported, and yeah, there's no illegal software on the system. A64, are all high-risk or critical security updates for operating systems and firmware installed within 14 days of release? So this is making sure that your operating systems, your computers, your mobile phones, all devices are kept up to date, and for any critical security updates, they're installed and pushed out within 14 days. So for instance, Windows is Patch Tuesday, which is every second Tuesday of the month. You've just got to make sure that all your computers are fully up to date and have got all the latest security fixes within 2 weeks of that Patch Tuesday. For A65, are all high-risk or critical security updates for applications, including any associated files and plugins such as Adobe Flash, installed within 14 days of release? Again, this is the same as the previous question, but just making sure that third-party applications are kept up to date. So for instance, as it says, the Adobe Flash, making sure that that's kept up to date. Java's kept up to date. Office, anything like that. Ideally, if you can go into the application, make sure auto update is enabled. So therefore, it'll pull down any updates for that application and automatically install it as soon as it's made available. A66, have you removed any applications on your devices that are no longer supported and no longer receive regular fixes for security problems? Again, this is just making sure that you've only got the updates or the software on your machines that you actually absolutely need and are kept up to date and are supported. The last thing you want to do is have old legacy software on your computers that are vulnerable. It gets exposed, some person sees it, and you get your computer compromised, and then it just opens up a can of worms. Section 7 for user accounts. 7.1, are users only provided with user accounts after a process has been followed to approve their creation? So this is just making sure that is there a process in place where you provision user accounts for computers? That should be a yes, and you just put the description in how that happens. So for example, it might be a case of yes, a new person comes in, gets onboarded, HR processes the relevant paperwork, gets passed to IT creates the user account for the permissions that are required. A72, can you only access laptops, computers and servers in your organization and the applications they contain by entering a unique username and password? That's just making sure that when you get to a computer or a device, you have to actually physically type something in. So as long as you've got a username, you've got a password, you log in, that's great. If you just turn a device on, it logs you straight in without any login attempts. That's a fail, and you need to get that sorted. A73, how do you ensure that you have deleted or disabled any accounts for staff that are no longer at your organization? This is just about offboarding or leavers policy. So if someone leaves, what do you do to ensure that their accounts are all disabled and locked down and they've left the company properly? Just write down a description how you do that. A74, do you ensure that the staff only have privileges that you need to do the current job, and how do you do this? So again, this is just making sure that you've got a policy in place where people only have access to what they need and they've only got permissions to what they need. Making sure that everyone doesn't have administrative credentials for everything, everyone doesn't have full access to everything. So Section 7, administrative accounts. A75, do you have a formal process for giving someone access to systems at an administrative level? Here you should have a process for saying who has administrative level access and what you do and how is it given out, and just write a little description down there in this when you're doing the self-assessment. A76, how do you ensure that the staff only use administrative accounts to carry out administrative activities such as installing software and making configuration changes? This is making sure that you only use low-level user permissions. You should not be using administrative level accounts day in, day out, all day long. If you do, change it, make sure you only use a low-level privilege, and then when you need to, escalate up to administrative level to install software, drivers, anything like that. So A77, how do you ensure that administrator accounts are not used for accessing email or web browsing? This is just making sure that people do not use administrator accounts for day in, day out activity. If you've got an administrator account that has email associated to it, you browse the internet, that could possibly open your company to breaches, running malware, getting exploited, things like that. So just don't do it. A78, do you formally track which users have admin accounts in the organization? This should be a case of yes, you do. It's just making sure that you have a list of who has admin accounts. If you use an Active Directory, you could use Active Directory for reporting. If you use work groups, it could be an Excel spreadsheet. A79, do you review who should have administrative access on a regular basis? Again, this is just going through, making sure who has access to admin, and just doing some auditing and verification, because sometimes, if people have left, they might not have the accounts removed, or if they move to a different role, they might not need administrative access now, and they should have got rid of that. A710, have you enabled two-factor authentication for access to all administrative accounts? You might find that a lot of the time, a lot of the services that have administrative accounts, you can't do two-factor authentication, so if that's the case, just put no. And then for the next question afterwards, that you just put a description why you can't do that. If you can use a two-factor authentication, or you have got two-factor authentication enabled, just put yes. And A711, that's just putting the description, if displaying why you can't use two-factor authentication if you can't. And Section 8, Malware Protection. 8.1, are all your computers, laptops, tablets and mobile phones protected from malware by either having anti-malware software installed, limiting installation of applications to improve set, i.e. an app store or list proof applications, or application sandboxing? So this is just making sure that all the devices have anti-malware protection enabled, antivirus pretty much. You could use Windows Defender if it's for a Windows, or if it's a Mac, it could be just the App Store, the Apple iTunes Store, things like that. And just select the option and go from there. Oops, and I got a survey monkey, go away. 8.2, if option A, so if you've selected option A, you just need to put down where you have anti-malware installed. Is it set to update daily and scan files automatically upon access? That should be the default settings, and that should be yes. A83, if it's option A again, if you've got the anti-malware installed, is it set to scan web pages when you visit and warn them? That has to be a yes. So that's pretty much, most of the software these days will automatically scan your web pages for you and then warn you if you've gone to a malicious website. A84, if you're option B, where you use an app store or application signing, are your users restricted from installing unsigned applications? So what that's meaning is making sure that you don't have jailbroken phones, you're not installing untrusted applications which could potentially install malicious activity on your phones. A85, again, if it's option B, where you use an app store or an application signing, do you ensure that users only install applications that have been approved by your organization, and do you document this list of approved applications? So this is just making sure you know what applications are allowed to be installed on phones or mobile devices and have a list of it. If you have any applications that are installed on there that aren't approved, you should have them taken off. This could be managed by MDM or anything like that. And if it's option C, where you use application sandboxing, do you ensure that the applications within the sandbox are unable to access data stores, sensitive peripherals and local network? So this could be a case of you have a couple of virtual machines that if you open anything sensitive or anything untrusted, you open it in these virtual machines, test it all, which doesn't have any access to the internet or the local network. Once you've verified that's fine, then you can bring it onto the network. Again, just put a description on how you achieve that. And then that's the last question. TeraByte actually run a full day-long non-technical introduction to Cyber Essentials, how to fill it all in, how to go through all the questions in a lot more detail than what we've just done here, and going from there. So if you're interested in that, visit our website. It is a paid course, but we can help you through that, and it's licensed by IASME, so it's kept up to date and everything else. And with this, TeraByte are an IASME and Cyber Essentials certification body, so we actually provide IASME governance as well as Cyber Essentials. And yeah, if you need to contact us or want to see some more information about TeraByte, that's our website and email address. And if you need to, yeah, give us a contact. And if you have any questions about this, Cyber Essentials, penetration testing, anything, yeah, feel free to drop us a note and get back in touch. Right. Thanks.